The HOA President's son called 911 on me about my new smart lock. It was 6 a.m. when the police showed up at my ranch. They were there because a 21-year-old had faked an emergency. I had just installed a new lock on my own pool gate, but what happened next was unbelievable. When the officers arrived, the son was trying to force his way into my pool, screaming about his swimming rights. The cop asked him a simple question that changed everything. "Son, do you live here?" The way he answered made the officer's jaw drop, and what followed. Let's just say that $200 smart lock ended up exposing a huge criminal operation. For 5 years, I had worked non-stop, coding late into the night and living on energy drinks and takeout, but I finally got my reward. My tech startup sold to Google, and with money in my pocket, I bought my own slice of heaven. It was a 2-acre property in a community called Oak Creek Estates, complete with a 40-foot infinity pool that looked out over beautiful pine hills. For the first 2 weeks, it was everything I had ever wanted. Instead of annoying work notifications, I heard birds chirping. Instead of sleepless nights fixing code, I got real rest. Most importantly, there was total silence. I would swim in the morning, work on my new projects without being bothered, and go to sleep listening to the wind in the trees. It was perfect, almost to perfect. The first sign of trouble appeared on a Monday morning. I walked out to my pool with my coffee and saw that the lounge chairs had been moved. It wasn't a big change, but my detail-oriented personality couldn't ignore it. There were also wet spots on the pool deck, which was strange because it hadn't rained. I tried to tell myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe the wind moved the chairs and the wet spots were just morning dew. But then I went to clean the pool's skimmer basket and my stomach dropped. Floating among the leaves was a used condom. My hands were shaking as I scooped it out with the net. Someone had been in my pool. Someone had been doing things in my pool. I spent the rest of the morning looking for more clues. The trash can near the pool house had 6 empty white claw cans inside, which was especially disturbing since I don't drink. There were cigarette butts ground into my clean patio, and worst of all, I found what looked like dried vomit behind a planter. My peaceful retirement home had been turned into a party spot, and I had no idea who was doing it or how they were getting in. The main gate was always locked. I was very strict about that, and the side gates were secure. Yet somehow, a lot of people had been on my property, treating it like their own personal playground. That afternoon, I remember the old, cheap security camera the previous owner had installed at the main gate. The video was grainy, but I hoped it had caught something. I fast-forwarded through hours of nothing until I got to Saturday night around 11 p.m. What I saw made my blood boil. One car after another pulled up to my gate. Teenagers and young adults, at least 20 or 30 of them, piled out. Standing at the gate like a nightclub bouncer was a young man I would later learn was Chad. He was collecting cash from every person before letting them onto my property, using what must have been a copied key or a secret code. The party footage was even worse than I imagined. They weren't just swimming. They were drinking heavily, blasting music, and several couples were getting way too close on my pool deck. I watched in shock as one kid threw up in my pool and another threw beer cans into my garden. They had turned my private sanctuary into their own personal nightclub. The worst part was watching Chad at the end of the night. He was counting a thick stack of cash with a smug look on his face. This wasn't just trespassing, it was a business. Someone was selling tickets to my pool for what looked like $50 a person. He had made over $1,000 in a single night from my property. The next morning, I went to the hardware store and bought the best smart lock I could find, an August Smart Lock Pro with a built-in HD camera. I spent the afternoon installing it, making sure the camera had a clear view of anyone who approached. I also put up a big private property, no trespassing sign. From now on, the lock could only be opened with my phone, and I would get an alert if anyone tried to mess with it. I thought that would be the end of the problem. I was wrong. Just 2 hours after I finished, there was a loud pounding on my front door, like someone was trying to break it down. I opened it to find a woman in her mid-50s dressed in what I can only call the official Quran uniform, a bleached blonde bob and oversized sunglasses, even though she was on my covered porch. Her face was twisted with anger. "What is this ugly thing on your gate?" she yelled, without even saying hello. I tried to introduce myself as the new owner, but she cut me off, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at me. "I'm Barbara Whitman, president of the Oak Creek Estates Homeowners Association, and that electronic eyesore is against our rules." She handed me a paper, an official HOA violation notice. It said I had 48 hours to remove the lock or I'd be fined $500 every day. This neighborhood has standards. We're not some tech wasteland where people can just install whatever they want. Her voice was so high-pitched, I'm pretty sure only dogs could hear it. I tried to tell her about the trespassing and the parties, but she didn't care. "If you have security concerns, you submit a request to the HOA board for approval," she snapped. "You don't just make decisions without asking that affect our property values." As she stormed away, my elderly neighbor, Arthur, came over from next door holding a loaf of banana bread. "Welcome to Barb's kingdom, son," he said with a sad smile. He looked at the violation notice and shook his head. That's her favorite rule. She made it up last year when the Johnsons tried to install a video doorbell. He paused, then told me something that made my blood run cold. "You know, before she lost everything in that big real estate disaster, she used to be reasonable. But now, her HOA presidency is all she has left. She protects it like a queen protects her throne." Arthur stayed and talked with me on my porch. He told me the full story of Barbara. She and her husband used to be major real estate developers, but they lost everything when their biggest project, Dragon Plaza, failed completely. After the lawsuits, bankruptcy, and divorce, the only things she had left were her house and her position as HOA president, and her son, Chad, Arthur added. Well, he was in college until he got caught borrowing a professor's laptop. Now he just lives with his mom and acts like he owns the place. Speaking of which, Arthur said, looking at me seriously, "She needs your pool badly." I must have looked confused because he continued. "Think about it. A big house with no income, trying to keep up a lifestyle she can't afford. But your pool, that beautiful private pool the last owner never used. That's been Chad's personal ATM for years, those parties you found evidence of. They happen every weekend, $50 a person, sometimes more." My jaw dropped. This wasn't just kids sneaking in for a swim, this was basically organized crime. "But how did they get in?" I asked. Arthur shrugged. "The old owner was never here, so the property management company had the keys Chad's girlfriend used to work there. The next few days were quiet, maybe too quiet. I was waiting for another fight, but Barbara and Chad seemed to be lying low. I started to relax, thinking the new lock had actually solved the problem. I should have known better. These people had a business built on my property. They weren't going to quit over one smart lock. What happened next was so big it made the national news and changed all of our lives. It began at 6:15 on a Thursday morning. I was in my kitchen making coffee when I heard shouting from the pool gate. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the camera feed. There was Chad with 3 friends, all holding pool bags and coolers. He was yanking on the gate and kicking it, screaming curses. "What the hell? Mom said this would be fixed." One of his friends, a girl in a bikini, whined. "Dude, I promised Ashley we'd have the sunrise session. She's bringing her photographer." Chad was getting more and more angry. This stupid lock. I bet that nerd installed it just to mess with us. Then I watched him do something that would seal his fate. He stared right into my camera, took out his phone, and I watched him dial 911. Help. He yelled into the phone, "There's a man drowning in my neighbor's pool." His voice had completely changed from an angry teenager to a panicked citizen. I can see him sinking. Oh God, he's not moving. He went under and hasn't come up. He was putting on a real show, even waving his hands for the camera as if the 911 operator could see him. The gate has some kind of electronic lock. I can't get in to save him. Please hurry. The address is 1847 Oak Creek Drive. Please, he's going to die. He hung up and high-fived his friend. That'll teach him to lock us out. The cops will make him open it. We'll get in, and Mom will handle the rest. Asterisk 8 minutes later, to police cars with sirens blaring screamed into my driveway. I met them at the front door, still in my pajamas and holding my coffee. Sir, we have a report of an active drowning in your pool. We need access immediately, one officer said. They had bolt cutters and were ready to break in. I stayed calm even though my heart was pounding. Officers, I'll gladly open the gate, but first you need to see something. There's no one drowning in my pool. In fact, there's no one in my pool at all. But I can show you who made that call, and why. The officers looked doubtful but followed me into my living room where my laptop was set up. I pulled up the security footage on my big 65-inch TV so they could see it clearly. This is my pool at 6:13 a.m., I said, showing them the perfectly still, empty pool. Here's 6:14 when the young man shows up and tries the gate. And here's 6:15 where he looks directly at my camera and makes the phone call, asterisk. We watched Chad's Oscar-worthy performance, his fake panic, and his detailed lies about a drowning man. And here's the pool from 6:16 to 6:24 when you arrived. Still empty, still undisturbed. The senior officer's face went from doubtful to furious. He turned and looked out the window where Chad was still standing by the gate, probably waiting for the police to let him in. Filing a false report is a criminal offense, the officer said grimly, especially one that wastes emergency resources. We had to pull units from other calls for this. He and his partner walked outside, and I followed with my laptop. Chad's arrogant expression vanished when he saw the look on the officers' faces. Did you make him open it? The drowning man ... double quote he started to say, but the senior officer cut him off. Sir, we need to talk to you about filing a false police report. Chad's acting skills kicked in again. What? No. I saw someone drowning. The app must have glitched, but the officer wasn't buying it. The app didn't glitch while you were staring at the camera making the call. We just watched the footage. I helpfully turned my laptop around to show Chad the video of himself. His face went completely white. I thought I saw ... maybe it was a shadow. His friends had all backed away, suddenly fascinated by their phones. Sir, filing a false 911 report is a misdemeanor, the officer stated. It can lead to jail time and large fines. You wasted the time of emergency services that could have been saving real lives. Just then, a Mercedes SUV sped into my driveway, and Barbara jumped out like an avenging angel. What are you doing to my son? She screamed, putting herself between Chad and the officers. He was just trying to help. He thought he saw someone drowning. The officer calmly took out his tablet and showed her the footage. I watched Barbara's face change from fake righteousness to shock and then to pure panic. He must have been mistaken. The stress of his semester, he's been under so much pressure. The officers spent the next 20 minutes taking statements and giving Chad an official warning for false reporting. Barbara tried every trick in the book, crying, threatening their jobs, promising it would never happen again, but the evidence was to clear. As they were about to leave, the senior officer turned to me. You might want to get a restraining order. This seems like it's not over. Barbara heard him, and her fake composure completely shattered. She grabbed Chad's arm and turned to me, her eyes filled with pure hatred. You'll regret this, she hissed. I know how to make people like you leave. This neighborhood was perfect before you came. Enjoy your pool while you can, but I had to wonder, why would a millionaire HOA president need to steal money from my pool? If you've ever had a crazy HOA experience, drop your city in the comments. I'm making a map of where the worst Karens live. The war truly started at 7 a.m. the very next morning. I was swimming my usual laps, enjoying the quiet of my now secure pool, when I heard sirens again. Not far off sirens, but sirens pulling right into my driveway. I climbed out of the pool to find two officers approaching, looking embarrassed. "Sir, we have a noise complaint," one said, though it sounded more like a question, even they seemed to know how absurd it was. A noise complaint about me swimming laps in my own pool at 7 in the morning. We all turned and saw Barbara watching us from her window with a satisfied look on her face. Day 2 of Barbara's revenge was even more official. I woke up to find her on her hands and knees in my front yard, measuring my grass with a ruler. She was taking pictures from every angle to prove that my grass was 3.5 inches tall when the HOA limit was supposedly 3 inches. By noon, the community's social media page was filled with her posts. "Some people think rules don't apply to them," she wrote, next to close-up photos of my slightly too long grass. "We have standards in this neighborhood that everyone must follow." The post got 47 likes and 23 angry comments in an hour, mostly from her loyal followers who supported everything she did. Day 3, she moved on to attacking my character. Barbara had apparently spent hours taking pictures of my house from all sides, focusing on my security cameras. Her posts made me sound like some kind of creepy tech nerd who was spying on everyone. "Our children are being watched by his cameras," she wrote, completely ignoring that the cameras only covered my own property. "He refuses to share neighborhood amenities while spying on our families." The comments started pouring in. "Creepy. Why does he need so many cameras? My kids don't feel safe anymore." Every comment felt like a tiny knife turning neighbors I had never even met against me. On day 4, the legal threats began. A thick envelope arrived from the law firm of Brewster, Coleman and Associates. Inside was a demand for $50,000 in damages. The letter claimed I had caused severe emotional distress to Chad, damaged his reputation by implying he was a criminal, and created a hostile living environment for the Whitman family. I shook my head as I read the ridiculous legal words. $50,000 for stopping someone from illegally trespassing on my property. The letter went on to threaten more legal action if I didn't remove the smart lock and issue a public apology for harassing a young man who was only trying to help. That night, I sat by my pool in the dark, wondering if I had made a huge mistake. The paradise I bought was quickly becoming a nightmare. Neighbors were avoiding me, and parents were pulling their kids away when I walked by. The peace I had looked forward to was gone, replaced by a constant feeling of tension. I thought about just removing the lock. Maybe having a pool wasn't worth being the neighborhood outcast. But then I thought about the principle of it. This was my property. I had worked 60-hour weeks for 5 years to earn this. Why should I let an entitled kid and his Karen mother bully me into giving up? I was pulled from my thoughts by footsteps. It was Arthur, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Figured you could use this," he said, handing me a mug. We sat in silence for a moment before he spoke. "You know why I'm helping you, right? Why I'm willing to stand up to Barbara when everyone else is scared." He took out his phone and showed me a photo of a pretty teenage girl. "This is my granddaughter, Stephanie. She's 16, a straight-A student. Last year, she went to one of those pool parties. She came home barely able to walk. The hospital said her blood alcohol was 0.24. My stomach dropped as Arthur continued. Chad sold her vodka $60 for a $20 bottle. When she could barely stand, his friends thought it was funny to push her in the pool. She nearly drowned. Actually drowned, not the fake kind Chad was talking about yesterday. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands trembling. I complained to Barbara. You know what she said, kids will be kids. Maybe you should teach your granddaughter to handle her liquor better. That's when I knew. Barbara wasn't just allowing this to happen. She was profiting from it. Arthur sat his coffee down and showed me something else on his phone. "But here's what you don't know yet," he said. "Here's why Barbara needs your pool so badly." He showed me a social media profile called Paradise Pool Exclusive. My jaw dropped. It had over 5,000 followers. The bio said, Oak Creek's most exclusive pool experience, with a water emoji and instructions to DM for bookings. Every single photo, every single one, was taken at my pool. My infinity edge at sunset, my pool house decorated for parties, my diving board with teenagers doing flips. There were hundreds of posts going back 3 years. Check the tag location on those photos, Arthur said quietly. I did. Every photo was tagged with my address, asterisk. These people had been running a business out of my backyard for 3 years. As I scrolled through the posts in horror, I saw there were themed parties, midnight splash Fridays, sunset vibe Saturdays, and Sunday fun day photo shoots. The comments were full of people talking about the sick venue and asking to book their own events. One comment stood out: best $50 I ever spent, way better than the public pool. That's when I noticed something strange about the social media photos. They were all tagged with my exact address. If you've ever dealt with a crazy HOA, drop your city in the comments. I'm making a map of where the worst Karens live. I wasn't done uncovering the full story of this operation, not by a long shot. Over the next 72 hours, I went into full detective mode. I downloaded every single one of the 847 posts from the Paradise Pool account. I then compared them with my security footage, creating a detailed timeline. This wasn't just kids sneaking into a pool. It was a fully organized business with set hours, premium prices, and special events, asterisk. The pattern I found was shocking. Friday nights were midnight splash parties from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m., costing $50 per person, with 30 to 40 people attending each time. Saturdays featured sunset vibes from 6 p.m. to midnight, with a $75 VIP access fee that apparently included use of my pool house and outdoor kitchen. Sundays were influencer hours, where aspiring social media models paid $200 for 2-hour photo shoot slots, and Wednesdays, those were Barbara's private swimming lessons at $100 an hour, though the footage showed very little actual swimming instruction. I pulled out my calculator and did the math. A conservative estimate put their weekly income between $3,500 and $4,000. Over 3 years, that added up to between $546,000 and $624,000. Let's be generous and call it $100,000 a year. That was $100,000 in revenue, all made from my property without my knowledge or permission. And I was willing to bet that not a single penny of it was ever reported to the IRS. The more I investigated, the more evidence I found. I had video of Barbara personally counting stacks of cash at the end of each night. I found Chad's inventory lists for alcohol sales marked up 300% from what he paid. The numbers on the screen made me feel sick. Barbara wasn't just stealing. She was building an empire on my property. Holiday parties had even higher prices, with $100 entry fees for the 4th of July and $150 per person for New Year's Eve. They even charged an extra $50 for access to my gazebo, which they called a VIP cabana. One video from the month before was especially damning. Barbara was lecturing Chad about their profits. "This month, I'm taking 80%, she said in the video. "Clearly, you need to learn better management skills." Chad argued that he did all the work, but Barbara cut him off. "I handle the cops, the neighbors, the HOA. That's worth 80%. The mention of handling cops sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't their first time getting into trouble. They had systems in place for dealing with complaints. How many other neighbors had tried to speak up, only to be shut down by Barbara's power? I found my answer in the community's social media archives. 3 years ago, the previous owner of my house had posted about noise and trespassing. The comments were awful, led by Barbara, who called him a bitter old man who hated children having fun. He had deleted the posts, and property records showed he put the house up for sale just 2 months later, but the final piece of evidence came from a video recorded just 1 week ago, a few days after I moved in, but before I installed the new lock. Barbara and Chad were having a strategy meeting by my pool. The new owner seems like a tech nerd, Chad said. Think he'll be a problem? Barbara's response was chilling. They all give up eventually. A few HOA violations, some social pressure, maybe a legal threat or two. He'll either get in line or move out like the others. She then looked directly into Chad's camera and added, and if he doesn't, well, we have ways of making life very uncomfortable for uncooperative neighbors. I saved every piece of evidence on multiple drive screenshots, videos, financial records, all organized by date in folders. But I wasn't finished. I needed to understand just how big this operation was. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the wall, just amazed at the scale of what I had found. For hours, I had been working like a robot, clicking, downloading, and organizing, but now, with hundreds of files in organized folders, the truth was sinking in. This wasn't just a few reckless kids. It was a network, a money-making machine, a pipeline that had turned my backyard into a luxury business without my permission. My hands hovered over my keyboard as the air in the room felt heavy. I thought about Stephanie, the girl Arthur had told me about, and all the parents who had no idea their kids were being lured into dangerous, drunken parties. I thought about how Barbara smiled in every HOA meeting video I could find, acting like she was the caring queen of the neighborhood. No one suspected a thing, but if she was this confident and organized, she wouldn't have left the money trail completely exposed. There had to be some kind of official front, a fake company she used to make it all look legal. I was going to find. A search of the state's business database revealed B&C Entertainment LLC, B for Barbara, C for Chad, registered to Barbara's home address. The business was listed as event planning but had never filed a tax return. It had no business license, no insurance, and no permits. It was just pure profit, funneled through a fake company that only existed on paper. The real shock came when I compared the Paradise Pool follower list with public records of missing person reports and hospital visits that had made the news. At least 3 teenagers who attended these parties had ended up in the emergency room with alcohol poisoning. One girl had gone missing for 12 hours after a party and was later found passed out in the nearby woods. Another had crashed his car driving home drunk, luckily only damaging property. These weren't just parties. They were dangerous, unregulated events that put kids in danger, and Barbara and Chad were making money from every single one. I thought I had enough evidence. Then I found the video that would destroy them both, recorded just last week. My hands trembled as I watched Barbara and Chad discussing their plans to expand. They weren't happy with just my pool. They were already looking at the Johnsons' tennis court for exclusive court time and the Millers' boat dock for premium water experiences. Barbara explained her vision. Once I get reelected as HOA President next month, I can change the rules about property access. Emergency community use provisions. Then we can legally use any amenity we want. Chad just grinned and asked about how they would split the profits. 70-30, Barbara said. And that's generous. I sat back, stunned by what I had discovered. This wasn't just about my pool. This was about a woman who had turned the entire neighborhood into her personal business, using HOA rules as weapons and her neighbors' properties as her assets. The question was no longer if I should fight back, but how to expose this in a way that would make it stick. Barbara had been doing this for years. She had systems, connections, and probably had dirt on half the neighborhood, but I had something she didn't expect: video proof of everything, the tech skills to present it perfectly, and most importantly, nothing left to lose. The neighborhood already hated me. What did I care if they hated me more? That night, I made my decision. I would take all of this to the monthly HOA meeting. It would be a public forum with all the residents there. There would be no way for Barbara to lie or control the story. I spent hours creating a presentation that would be impossible to ignore. 15 slides that told the story from my dream of paradise to the prison of their making. But even as I worked, I wondered if anyone would believe me or if they were all in on it, all getting something from Barbara's schemes. The thought that bothered me the most was whether the other HOA board members knew. Were they getting paid off? Were they just scared? Or were they truly unaware of what their president was doing? I was about to find out. The October HOA meeting was in 3 days. I signed up to speak about neighborhood security concerns, which Barbara approved with a smirk, probably thinking I was going to complain about break-ins and give her more ammunition against me. Arthur promised to be there, sitting in the back with his phone ready to record everything. "This needs to be documented," he said. "When Barbara goes down, she tried to take everyone with her. We need proof of what really happened." As I submitted my speaker registration, I couldn't help but smile. Barbara thought she was playing chess, but I was about to learn that sometimes the best move is to flip the entire board. I had all the evidence, but would anyone at the HOA meeting even believe me? Or were they all part of it? What would you do with this evidence? Call the cops or destroy her in public? Comment below and I'll tell you what I chose. The 3 days leading up to the HOA meeting were the longest of my life. I went over my presentation again and again, making sure every slide was perfect and every piece of evidence was crystal clear. I practiced my speech in front of the mirror, timing myself to make sure I could say everything in my 15-minute time slot. But even as I prepared, I knew Barbara was working on her own plans. The morning of the meeting, I found my mailbox stuffed with printed screenshots from the community's social media page. Barbara had posted, "Emergency HOA vote tonight regarding property violations at 1847 Oak Creek Drive." She wasn't going to wait for my presentation. She was attacking first. I called Arthur, who just laughed darkly. "She's going to try to get you fined into silence before you can even speak. That's a classic Barbara move. But don't worry, I've got something planned too." He wouldn't tell me what it was, just to trust him and stick to the plan. I spent the day pacing and reviewing my notes, checking my laptop and backup drives one last time. Everything had to be perfect. This was my one chance to expose 3 years of criminal activity, and I couldn't risk any technical problems. By 7 p.m., I was sitting in my car outside the community center, watching the neighbors file in. The parking lot was much fuller than usual. Barbara had clearly called in her supporters. I saw faces I recognized from the angry online comments, and they all shot me dirty looks as they passed. Chad was there, too, slouching in a tank top that said "Support local businesses," a clear jab at me, asterisk. Barbara herself was in full presidential mode, wearing a power suit and holding a clipboard with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was greeting everyone at the door like a politician, shaking hands and whispering to them. I waited until 7:25 to go inside, not wanting to give her time to work on me before the meeting started. The community center was packed. There were over 50 residents crammed into a space meant for 30. Extra chairs had been brought in, and people were standing along the walls. I found a seat near the front, where my laptop would be visible when I connected it to the projector. From the back corner, Arthur caught my eye and gave me a small thumbs up. His phone was already out, positioned to record the entire room. Good. Whatever happened tonight, there would be a record. Barbara called the meeting to order at exactly 7:30, banging her gavel with a look of victory. "Before we get to our scheduled speaker," she announced, her voice dripping with fake concern, "we have an urgent matter to address. It has come to my attention that the new resident at 1847 Oak Creek Drive has installed numerous unauthorized security devices that are creating a hostile environment for our community." She clicked a remote, and photos of my house appeared on the screen behind her. My cameras, my smart lock, even my perfectly legal security signs, all made to look like evidence in a criminal trial. "These devices violate multiple HOA regulations," Barbara continued, reading from her clipboard with a dramatic tone. She listed off several sections of the bylaws, but the one that got the crowd murmuring was about surveillance equipment that may capture images of neighbors or their children. Barbara was a master manipulator. She was playing on every parent's worst fear, completely ignoring the fact that my cameras only covered my own property. Therefore, Barbara announced, her voice rising, I move to impose an immediate $5,000. Fine for multiple violations with additional $500 daily fines until all unauthorized equipment is removed. All in favor, the response was immediate. 47 hands shot up as if they were spring-loaded. Only 3 people didn't vote, including Arthur. Barbara's smile was triumphant as she banged her gavel. Motion carries, Mr. Thompson, you have been formally fined $5,000 by community vote. Now, I believe you registered to speak about security concerns. I stood up slowly, making sure my laptop was connected to the projector. The room was filled with hostile faces, all looking smug and satisfied that they had put the outsider in his place. I smiled. Thank you for that, President Whitman. And yes, I would like to address security concerns. Specifically, the security of my private property. I clicked to my first slide, a beautiful photo of my pool at sunset. This is what I purchased, private property. A place to find peace after years of hard work. But let me show you what I actually got. The crowd shifted uncomfortably as I clicked to the next slide, which showed the mess I had found that first morning: the beer cans, the cigarette butts, and worse. Someone has been using my pool without permission, I said. But that's not the worst part. Click. The next slide showed footage from my old security camera, the teenagers, the drinking, the couples, the vomiting. The room erupted. Oh my God. That's Jessica. A woman in the third row screamed. Another parent stood up, his face red with anger. That's my son. He's only 16. Chad's head snapped up from his phone, his arrogant expression melting into panic. But I was just getting started. The next slide showed Chad at the gate collecting cash. The next showed him counting the money. The next showed Barbara receiving her envelope of cash. The room had gone from hostile to shocked, with voices rising in anger and confusion. What the hell is this? Someone shouted. Is that our HOA president? Barbara tried to regain control. These are clearly edited, deep fakes, but her voice was drowned out by the crowd as I clicked to the next slide, the Paradise Pool exclusive social media page. 5,247 followers, I said calmly. 847 posts over 3 years, every single one taken at my pool. Every single one tagged with my address. The room completely exploded. Parents were pulling out their phones, finding the page, and recognizing their own children in the photos. They've been selling access to his pool, someone yelled. For how long? I clicked again, and the Excel spreadsheet with my conservative calculations appeared. Based on their documented prices and attendance, I estimate $200,000 in annual revenue. That's $600,000 over 3 years, all unreported, all untaxed. The crowd was in a full riot now, but Barbara was still trying to fight back. These are baseless accusations. I demand you stop this presentation immediately. But I'm not done, I said, not even close. Let me show you something from last week. I clicked to the video of Barbara and Chad planning their business. Barbara's voice filled the room. This month, I'm taking 80%. You need to learn better management skills. I handle the cops, the neighbors, the HOA. That's worth 80%. The room went dead silent, except for Barbara's own recorded voice. I handled the cops, the neighbors, the HOA. You could have heard a pin drop. Where's our HOA money, Barbara? Someone shouted from the back. It was like a dam breaking. Suddenly, everyone was yelling at once. You've been lying to us. My daughter could have died at one of those parties. This is fraud. Barbara was banging her gavel, screaming for order, but no one was listening. Chad had stood up and was trying to sneak out the door, but a group of angry parents blocked his path. You sold my kid alcohol, one father snarled. $60 for a 20 bottle. I raced my vasioft, but wait, there's more. Therum quietadunt toaster anenina BNCENTERTAINMENTLLC Barbaron Chad's company registered Dasaventling never taxes, never got permits, never carried dinserin, Iclicitath obstras trinazinina 20 bottle. I raced my vasioft, but wait, there's more. Therum quietadunt toaster anenina BNCENTERTAINMENTLLC Barbaron Chad's company registered Dasaventling never taxes, never got permits, never carried dinserin, Iclicitath obstras trinazinina 600,000 in revenue, 0 reported to the IRS. The meaning of it all hit the room like a ton of bricks. Tax evasion, fraud, serving alcohol to minors, child endangerment. This wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was criminal. That's when another parent stood up, shaking. What she said next made Barbara's face turn ghost white. My daughter is in the ICU from your party. 3 weeks ago, my daughter Emma went to a pool party. She came home unconscious, blood alcohol poisoning. The hospital said she nearly died. She's still in intensive care. The friend who brought her home said she paid someone named Chad for vodka. The woman was crying now, holding up a hospital bill. $47,000 in medical bills because of your illegal parties. The room erupted into absolute chaos. More parents stood up with their own stories. My son is in rehab. You told us our kids were the problem. You've been using us to protect. Your crime ring, Barbara's carefully built world, was falling apart in front of everyone. She tried one last, desperate attempt to regain control. This is ... These are all lies, manufactured evidence. I was trying to provide safe, supervised activities for our youth. The money was for maintenance and improvements. Check the HOA accounts. Someone screamed, "Show us where the money went." Barbara's face went from red to white. She looked around the room like a trapped animal, but found no one on her side. Even her usual supporters were staring at her in horror. Chad chose that moment to make a run for the door, but Arthur stepped out from his corner, still recording, going somewhere. Chad, I think these parents would like a word with you. Chad spun around, trapped between Arthur and a crowd of furious. Parents. I clicked to my second to last slide. I sent all of this evidence to the appropriate authorities 3 hours ago. The IRS has copies of everything. The state tax board is investigating. The business licensing department has been notified. And yes, the police are fully aware of the underage drinking and child endangerment. Barbara's legs gave out and she sank into her chair, her gavel falling from her hand. But I had one more slide. The real question is this. She didn't just steal from me. She endangered your children. She used your HOA positions to protect her crimes. She turned you into accomplices. So, what are you going to do about it? The room was in a total uproar. Someone had already called the police again. Parents were demanding to see the HOA's financial records. The other board members were rushing to say they knew nothing. Chad was surrounded by angry parents demanding to know what he had sold their kids. And through it all, Barbara sat frozen at the president's table, watching her empire collapse. Arthur was still filming, capturing every single moment. The meeting that was supposed to destroy me had become Barbara's public execution. Then the door opened. 2 IRS agents in dark suits walked in, followed by local police. The room went silent again. Barbara Whitman, one of the agents, asked. Barbara's head snapped up, her face a mask of terror. We need to speak with you regarding BNC Entertainment LLC and approximately $600,000 in unreported income. Barbara tried to run, but it was a clumsy attempt. She stumbled over someone's purse and fell face first onto the worn carpet. The crowd gasped as she struggled to get up, her perfect suit wrinkled, her makeup smeared. I want my lawyer, she screamed as the officers helped her to her feet. This is entrapment, this is harassment, I'll sue every one of you but her. Threats were useless now. The room watched in stunned silence as the HOA president, who had ruled their neighborhood with an iron fist, was led away in handcuffs. Chad wasn't far behind. "Mom," he cried out. "Mom, say something. Help me," but Barbara wouldn't even look at him. She kept her head down, defeated, as they took her away. Chad's abandonment was complete. The woman who had enabled and profited from his crimes couldn't save him now. The room erupted in applause. Someone started a slow clap, and soon the entire community center was giving me a standing ovation. People who had glared at me an hour earlier were now shaking my hand, thanking me for exposing the truth. Parents hugged each other, relieved that their children were safe. The other board members scrambled to distance themselves from Barbara's crimes. And through it all, Arthur kept filming, documenting the complete transformation of a community. The meeting went on for another 2 hours as residents demanded answers, formed committees to investigate the HOA finances, and called for new elections. Barbara was in jail, but Chad was still out there, and he just posted something that made my blood run cold. Guess what Chad tried to do next? Wrong answers only in the comments. The fallout was fast and total. Within 24 hours, the local news had the story. HOA President ran teen drinking ring. Made for great headlines, and Barbara's mugshot became the most shared image in the state. Channel 7 did a special investigation, interviewing parents and showing my security footage with the faces blurred. The Paradise Pool social media page gained 10,000 followers overnight before being shut down as evidence. Chad's personal accounts were flooded with angry comments from parents whose kids had been put in danger. What made my blood run cold was Chad's final post before his arrest. "They're lying. I'll be back. That pool is mine." The delusion was complete. Even facing criminal charges, he still believed he had some right to my property. 1 week later, the full scope of Barbara's crimes was revealed. Forensic accountants discovered she had embezzled over $50,000 from HOA funds to support her lifestyle, while her illegal pool business paid for the rest. 8 families filed lawsuits against her. The girl, who had been in the ICU, thankfully recovered, but her family's lawyer was seeking $2 million in damages. Barbara was denied bail as prosecutors argued she was a flight risk with hidden assets. Chad got luckier. He was released but was ordered to stay 500 feet from my property and perform 300 hours of community service. The judge specifically made him work at a youth substance abuse center, forcing him to see the real consequences of selling alcohol to kids. His tears at sentencing were the first real emotion I had seen from him. 1 month later, a foreclosure sign went up on Barbara's house. The neighborhood gossip was that she had mortgaged it 3 times to pay for her legal fees. Chad was spotted working at McDonald's as part of his court-ordered employment. The HOA held emergency elections, and a retired accountant named Jim became the new president. His first act was to order a full financial audit. His second was to issue me a formal apology and a $10,000 settlement for the damages caused by the old administration. With that money, I upgraded my security system to include AI facial recognition, 8 cameras with night vision motion sensors that could detect a mosquito, and an automated alert system that would make Fort Knox jealous. But the best part was the new sign I installed next to my pool. It's 6 feet tall and professionally made, impossible to miss. It reads, "Private Property, AI Facial Recognition Active. Chad Whitman detected equals automatic police response." Yes, Chad, this means you. 2 weeks after I installed it, the system got its first test. Chad appeared exactly 51 meters from my property line. The system stayed quiet. He took 1 step closer, crossing into the 50-meter range. Instantly, alarms blared, floodlights lit up, and an automated voice boomed, "Intruder detected." Chad Whitman identified, calling police. He ran so fast he left his shoes behind. Arthur got it all on video and made it his new ringtone. These days, I finally have the peace I paid for. Every morning, I swim my laps in complete silence. Every evening, I sit by my pool with a book and a whiskey, enjoying the sound of absolutely nothing. Barbara is serving 5 to 7 years for tax evasion, fraud, and child endangerment. Chad still drives by sometimes, but he has learned to stay exactly 50 meters away. The alarm works perfectly every single time. Last week, I got an email that made me laugh out loud. Congratulations, you've been elected HOA President with 98% of the vote. I stared at it in disbelief. After everything I went through to escape HOA drama, they wanted me to run the show. Arthur's text arrived moments later. With your security system, we'll have the safest neighborhood in America. Congratulations, Mr. President. You know what? Maybe being HOA President wouldn't be so bad. At least I knew I'd never abuse the power dot, so that's how a $200 smart lock exposed a $600,000 crime ring, sent an HOA president to prison, and accidentally made me the most unwilling HOA president in history. The lock that Barbara called an eyesore ended up being the key to justice. She wanted it gone in 48 hours. Instead, she's behind much uglier locks for the next 5 to 7 years. As for Chad, he actually tried to break in again last week. The footage is absolutely insane. Should I make a part 2? Let me know in the comments, and remember, if your HOA president seems a little too interested in your pool, maybe you should install a smart lock. You never know what secrets might be hiding. What did we learn today? Probably nothing, but it was fun, wasn't it? Show some love with a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the HOA Uncovered.